I did want to ask you was a Tom Gores question. I think Omari had asked it about comments about wanting to start fresh. I
Yeah.
wanted to know kind of like your initial reaction to him saying like, "Hey, like I thought for Trajan to be here and start brand new." What was kind of like your reaction to him saying like I wanted them to have just a fresh slate? I guess.
So it's interesting because I have been now through a whole year of press conferences. Monty's was my first ever like big press conference I did. I think the first real Pistons press conference I did was Casey's exit interview. Which shout out to him, one of the nicest people I've ever
Oh yeah.
talked to. I talked to him for like probably like 30 minutes after the press conference. Such a nice guy. Um, but the tone Tom Gores had at the Monty introduction last year and the overall I got to find a better word than vibes, but like the overall vibes of the situation between Monty and the introduction of Trajan were like night and day. Um, and then even just kind of assessing like being a little away from the situation, seeing Tom Gores in general, because I've been following the Pistons my whole life, right? And for most of my life, Tom Gores has owned the Pistons, which I guess dates me a little bit. But but it was interesting because it was really candid, and he started the speech by noting that his daughter was like, you got to start writing things out, and you got to start writing things out and planning what you say, and you could tell that like he's someone who I know has his faults, right? As a NBA owner, where he kind of gets criticized for not being there or not knowing basketball or whatever. And like he addressed all of those things specifically. And I feel like in the past he was a little more defensive when it came to just his overall perception around the league and around like this fan base. You can tell that he cares a lot. And I think before he wanted to prove himself as a great basketball mind and a great basketball owner, but I think he's at a point now where he's like, okay, well, I'm kind of where I'm at. The team is where it's at. Let's reassess how we go about things. And he used the word CEO a lot when he was describing Trajan. And I think that's really important because even when you look at someone like Stan Van Gundy, who had the same title, he was hired back in like what, 2014?
14. Yeah.
Yeah, 2014. That title of CEO wasn't really placed on Van Gundy, even though he technically did have more power as both head coach and president of basketball operations. It was interesting to know that like he admitted, yes, there's been too many voices. Yes, like I have interjected myself too much. Yes, we've made mistakes. But now I'm falling on Trajan. He doesn't just, and he said this a lot. He's not a basketball guy. He's not just a basketball guy, which obviously I know the fans just want to hear about basketball. But I think when it comes to decision making, having someone who you view as a CEO on just a business level makes a whole lot of difference in how you plan out things and how you go about things. And I don't mean to drag on too long, but I know you're you're a little bit of a wrestling guy.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the guys at back when we were at Woodward are big wrestling guys. And I can't help but kind of be reminded of, and this is kind of maybe a weird analogy, but I can't help but be reminded of like when Vince McMahon kind of lost the reins and Triple H came over in WWE. For those who are not inclined, wrestling is fake, right? But a lot of what goes into wrestling is planning, and you have to plan things in order to have a satisfying story and a satisfying conclusion, which leads to bigger ratings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Vince McMahon was a guy who kind of just wanted to go for the big pop. He wanted a big rating. He wanted a big, surprise. He would do things just for the sake of doing things. And I think that kind of describes Tom Gore's philosophy before. And Trajan to me seems like a slow burn type of guy. And for people that can go one of two ways, like some people are like, I would say most people are in for the long term, right? Like they want something they invest in to pay off at the end. And that seems like what Trajan's mentality is. Even in the way he speaks, you can tell he's very calculated in every single thing he says. And it seems very clear to me that he has a vision for this team And right now, we're at like ground zero. We are at laying the foundation. And I know people are tired of hearing that phrase, but it seems like he truly has a foundation in mind and that he knows where that foundation is going to go. So that's kind of the approach Triple H had taken when he took over WWE. And, you know, you look at like their ratings and their business numbers since he took over, and they're exploding, right? And right now, it might not seem like the approach people want to take, but I think long term, this shows a big change in philosophy.
So you're basically saying Trajan is going to turn NXT into a WWE.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
That's a great
way
of putting it.
If you're a wrestling nerd, you know what that is. I mean, I went to WrestleMania 23. I mean, some of those moves, breaking ladders in half, look pretty real. Like, I'm just going to say that.
I mean, yes. Yeah. I mean, wrestling takes a lot of physical. If you ever watch, you'll see the commercial. They go, "This stuff hurts," you know, like this hurts, and you know, like you know, there's a lot of real athleticism and injury involved in the profession.
I love that you turned it into a WWE analogy, because I feel like Pistons Twitter are hardcore wrestling fans. Like, I will see I'll see Rock memes, I'll see Undertaker memes. Like, I think the Pistons community are hardcore wrestling fans, and I love that because like Corey Woods, who I'm really good friends with, biggest wrestling guy you'll ever meet, man. He loves wrestling. My initial reaction was Tom Gores kind of reflected of like what he's done since he's bought the team, since he's purchased the team. And to your point, Vince McMahon always went for the pop, went for the big name. I mean, he went for Van Gundy. He went for Casey, went for Monty, and basically said it hasn't really got me anywhere. So why not take a chance on a guy that is younger, still has an impressive resume, but I believe he can build this to where there's success, and we can keep stacking years to where we could look back 5 years from now and kind of laugh at this at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things that like in the moment it seems like it could be concerning, I guess, if you're a Pistons fan, because all you've seen in the last, I don't know, 5 years is tanking and acquiring bad players or bad contracts, you know, all this other stuff. And I understand completely why that would be a concern. And I'm hesitant to say, oh, trust, you know, Trajan, and like the same way that you heard trust in Troy, right? But I truly do think he seems very calculated, and I think calculated is a great way to run a business.